So the idea for this actually came to me either Thursday night or Friday morning. I wasn't sure whether I wanted to, kind of start a new series or whatnot, but I had something happen that just sort of mentally got the ball rolling, and then a whole bunch of things from different parts of my life kind of started jumping in and wanting to be involved in the party. So I thought, well, I'll just make a message out of this. So how this started, I'm involved in a couple of, several different D&D games that are going on right now. I dungeon master most of the time, but on every other Thursday night recently, I've been playing in a game that is kind of a Lovecraftian sort of thing, where it's dark and not exactly gothic, because the setting is like an analogy of maybe the 19 teens or early 20s in New England. But I was playing a character that I've been wanting to play for a long time, and he's actually based on a character from a series of novels that Laura has read aloud to me, which is how, when we read a book together, that's how we do it. She reads aloud and I listen. They're the Johannes Cabal books, and they start with Johannes Cabal and the Necromancer. If any of my description gets you interested in any of these books, that's the one to start with. And it's just brilliant stuff. It is really, really well done. So the Johannes Cabal, the Necromancer, is this guy who's, from maybe an analogy of the late 1800s or early 1900s. And he has become obsessed with curing death. And so the way he does this is through necromantic research, and not to give much else away. That's kind of his gig, right? So I base a character on this when we get into the game. So Thursday night, we've kind of been directed, like in our quest for figuring out what's going on and trying to survive in this milieu that all of our characters got pulled into. We're checking out this university building, and so in order to cut a deal to where we're allowed to go through and research stuff, the receptionist lady told us that there are a couple of these monsters in the basement, and if we'll go down and take care of them, we can have the run of the place. And so we were like, well, okay, yeah, sure. So we get down there, and one of the first things we see is the biggest one of these kinds of critters that we've seen yet, other than the ones we saw underwater that are like the size of whales. And it's in this cage, and there's all this electrical equipment, and there's a big lever. So Johannes, being a necromancer and fascinated by dead things and experiments with dead things, immediately goes over and yanks the lever. And what happens next is the monster comes to life, breaks out of the cage, and kills half the party, me included, which I deserved. Because, if instead of playing what I thought was my character, if I'd really been playing my role within the party, I would have taken a very long look at everything around the lab and tried to find any sort of lab notes and learned everything I could before touching any buttons or turning any knobs, right? But I didn't do that. I got kind of, caught up in playing my character. And so it was nearly a TPK, means total party kill. And that's when the entire party gets wiped out and everybody, and you basically have to start the campaign over, right? So that just kind of got me thinking about playing my role and how we play our roles. And this is something that's come up several times in my life. And it started, I guess, when I was in high school. So my first semester in high school, I was in 10th grade, my first year in high school. The way it used to be set up was junior high was 7 through 9 and high school was 10 through 12. And I pledged thespians. And one of the things that gets burned into your brain when you're pledging the Thespian Society is the Thespian motto, which is a quote from a guy named Alexander Pope. And that quote is, "Act while you're part, there all the honor lies." This may have been the beginning of, kind of my overactive sense of duty, that, certainly got expanded on and, rooted in, with 32 years in the military. But it was, if ever there was a thing that kind of at least got me to take something seriously, it was thespians, and I know, as silly as this sounds, high school theater was the first thing that really taught me how to act like a professional, to really make a serious effort to show up wherever I was supposed to be, when I was supposed to be there, and to be fully prepared, ready to go, have what I needed, basically be a responsible, quote, adult, unquote, right? And for anybody in those red states that have actually opposed having thespian troops in their high schools, I'd say that's worth the price of the ticket right there. If you can get kids to just do those things, you're ahead of the game. But there's, inherent in that, right? Act well your part, there all the honor lies. There's some things that we have to ask ourselves about, and some other things that kind of come up. And so it is funny that the thespian motto is also, pretty analogous to one of the 4 agreements, which way down the road in my life became something that I really looked at and have done my best to, to emulate, to live by. And I think you all know, I've probably said more than once that my first deployment, when I took over the office that I worked out of for the rest of that deployment, I erased all the phone numbers and all the junk on the whiteboard behind my desk, and I wrote the 4 agreements up there. And, the 4th agreement is always do your best. And I found this interesting in a lot of the graphic representations of the 4 agreements. This is from the 4 agreements, but this that I have in the text in the slide is the way that the 4th agreement is expanded on. And I think this is important for all of us. But both, everybody that's on this right now, I think, could stand to hear what this says. And it says your best is going to change from moment to moment. It will be different when you're healthy as opposed to sick. Under any circumstance, simply do your best, and you will avoid self-judgment, self-abuse, and regret. And so, it's really, really important that, I remember that my best now is not going to be my best from 5 years ago or 10 years ago or 40 years ago. It's just not. But if I'm doing my best today, I'm okay. And I know that when we look at both this, always do your best, and then you go back to act well your part, there all the honor lies. The words that most of us tend to focus on are best and well, right? But the other piece of this that is really big that I really wanted to talk about today is the word your. So, the big question is, what is my part? Okay. Not just saying, act well your part. Okay, well, which part's mine? And I was remembering in the movie The Dresser, Norman the dresser is trying to get Sir, the leading actor of the Shakespearean company, to read Mr. Davenport Scott's script, because that'll make peace with Mr. Davenport Scott. And Norman tries very hard to keep the peace within that little theatrical troupe. And so, of course, Sir, being the egotistical actor, gets a big grin on his face and says, "Is there a part for me?" There's always a part for us, but the question is, are we being cast correctly? And Haley, I have over in the slide a little quote that says, "Sometimes you choose the wrong actor. He could be the best actor ever, but he's not cast in the right part, then it doesn't work." And I'm reminded, as I was doing some research of this, that originally they were considering Al Pacino for the role of Han Solo. And, Al is one of the iconic great actors of our time. But, that to me, it just makes me wince to think about him as Han Solo. You got to have the right person in the right role. So that threw me over into kind of another side of my brain where military things live. And part of that is based on something that used to be called effects-based operations. And if you said that out loud now in an Army place, they'd smack your wrist because, so, we don't do effects-based operations. Yeah, right. Okay. But we do take some of those tools and use them in whatever it is they're calling Army operations now. And those tools that we would take are part of the assessments that we do on how our operations are going. We call them MOPS and MOs. MOPS are measures of performance, and MOs are measures of effectiveness. Measures of performance tell us, are we doing the things that we're doing correctly? Measures of effectiveness are those things we're doing actually accomplishing the mission? And, in military terms, a real good example is, okay, the mission is to drop this bridge. All right, measures of performance. When we sent a couple of F-16s in there with bombs, did the bombs hit the bridge? Yes or no? Right? But a measure of effectiveness is, okay, the bombs hit the bridge, but is the thing still standing? And if the thing's still standing, doesn't matter how good we hit it, it was ineffective, right? But these are terms and concepts that are not unique to the military. And when I was searching for a good image for this, I found one from a business article that and Haley, you can't see it, but it's this little manager looking dude running next to a stopwatch, and it says how to measure management performance and effectiveness. So we need to understand that there is a separation between performance and effectiveness, right? That those two things, you ideally you want to perform correctly and have it be the correct effect. But any three other of those is possible. You can not perform and not be effective. You can perform and not be effective, or you can not perform and maybe somehow you luck into being effective, but that's pretty rare. So I'm going to go back to the theater. So when I'm studying a script as a director, there's a gazillion different ways to analyze a play. You can take a look at it from a dramaturgical analysis, which is we take the play and we look at it in terms of where's my exposition, what's my rising action, what's my initial conflict, where does it get thicker, when is the climax, what is the denouement, whose character journeys are whose character journey follows the arc of the play, who's the leading character in terms of the one that actually has the biggest journey. But there is a very specific kind of analysis called a right role analysis. And what you do is you break the script down into rites or rituals, and you say, okay, what rite or ritual are the people on stage acting out right now? Is it the business meeting, or the big ask, or is it the family holiday dinner, or is it the parents meet the boyfriend? What what thing is it that, they're doing. And then you see which role within that ritual is each of the characters on stage playing, because it's very, not just possible, but often almost inevitable that the characters within the play, in addition to playing their persona of their character, they're taking on a role within that ritual that is unique to that ritual. Now, sometimes somebody may kind of be a one-trick pony and they always play the same role throughout all the rituals in the play. But then especially the characters that have a more dynamic arc are going to have different roles as things progress throughout the script. So it's important to understand what is happening. And I mean, not just what is physically happening on stage, but what is the ritual that is being played out before our eyes, so we can understand, kind of the internal life of each of the characters as they're making their way through this scene, right? Okay, so now with kind of that understanding as a background, we can ask ourselves about our own lives, have we been miscast? Right? And there are a lot of various theaters in which we play, and each of those theaters has different, different acts, different comedies and dramas, different rights in which we play a role. Now, one of the most common, and Haley, this is the one that I labeled in family, or in red, is the family of origin. Because boy, do a lot of us end up getting miscast there. But, our current family, our workplace, our church, community organizations, basically any place that we can play a role, yeah, we may be exactly in the right place at exactly the right time, playing exactly the right role. But it's also quite possible, and in fact, really, more probable, that at least in some of the areas of our life, we're not cast so well. And I Haley, I have a picture of Hayden Christensen as Anakin Skywalker here as an example, right? So when you think about those roles that we have when we're growing up, I mean, if you think about your family of origin, and I'm not sure, like how many, I mean, I know Laura had a metric crap ton of siblings, but in families, there is the person who likes to be in control, and very often in our patriarchal society, it's the quote father figure unquote. But in non-nuclear families, right, families that don't have a mom and a dad and kids, it can be anybody, right? I mean, when my parents got divorced, my sister was the one who liked to be in control. She was the controller. Usually somebody needs to be the jester. And, like in my family of origin, that was me. I was the class clown. I was the jester. That was kind of what I did. There's going to be, the good little boy or girl, the one that's always, I'm doing the right thing so I can get a pat on the head from mommy and daddy. And so and I'm sure most of you are thinking of some of the other roles that we play. But what's funny is that, we had these roles in our families of origin growing up, and we leave. And as we grow into our adulthood, we take on, hopefully we take on a persona that's really more, we're better cast at. But we get back with our family of origin, and damned if we don't immediately fall back into that role. Because like, oh, okay, we're doing this play. We're doing, it's a big holiday meal, and mom's pretty sure she's ruined Christmas. We're going to play that play out, whatever it might be, right? And people will invariably, sit in the same place at the table and have the same kinds of things to say, whether it's a beef or a compliment or whatever it might be. And then like the same person that sits there in the corner, trying to stay out of harm's way, is still sitting in the corner with their mouth shut, trying to stay out of harm's way. what we have to ask ourselves now is that who I really want to keep being, as we go forward? So here's the thing: we as human beings, as grown ass men and women, we have the option to change the roles we're playing. We don't have to stay in the role that we were originally cast in, or the roles that we were originally cast in. So, Haley, I know you can't see it, but I found this graphic, and it's about the movement from exiting one role that we're playing and then entering another role. And it talks about rights of separation versus rights of incorporation. So the thing that we have to understand and really be prepared for, and that's the key, is that yes, there is a cost. We are going to be crossing some existing boundaries. We're going to step out of some boxes that that maybe we ourselves, but for sure other people have put us in that box. And that's one of the things that is the greatest difficulty, is stepping out of the box that other people put you in. And I know for sure, my beloved wife Laura, the family of her first husband they thought they had her in a box that was labeled wife and mother, and maybe even minister. Probably not the box. No, definitely not the box she needed to be hanging out in. As difficult as what she's doing is right now, this is a better box for her. We were watching Star Trek Discovery the other night, and Empress Georgiou uttered a line that Laura was just like, yeah, that's it, and that was what was
it was, I hate not hard, not hard is boring, and I hate boring.
Yes, not hard is boring, and I hate boring. So what our challenge is, when we realize I hate not hard is boring, I need something, beyond what this, I need to not be in this box you people have stuck me in, right? I need to be in a different role. I need some new lines. I need a new costume, and I need to enter somewhere else, right? We're going to have some challenges, because we're going to have to redefine our existing role. And a lot of people are going to have some attitude about that. We're going to have to establish and enforce new boundaries in that new role. And we're going to have to deal with the expectation fed resentments that, people are going to throw at us. But, the honest to God truth is, probably the worst expectations that are going to get thrown at us are going to be our own. It's like, oh, but I can't work outside the house full time, or I can't really spend the time to, get this career going because I'd be neglecting my children or whatever. There's all this inner stuff going on, as well as the people, looking down their nose at you for, oh, you're not going to church today. You've got something else you want to do that you think is more important. Really? We have to be ready for those challenges. When we step out into a new role, we got to know there are going to be some people thinking, well, you were better where you were, you were better where I put you. And be willing to live with people's disassociations, if that's what it comes down to. Because the reward is that we get to live within the boundaries of a role that fits us. It's a whole different world when we can truly be ourselves and not somebody else's idea of who we are supposed to be. And it's funny. This is not, you'd think that this would go without saying, but there are times when it becomes so obvious that the right person is in the right place. And it's like I said earlier, it's hard to imagine Al Pacino as Han Solo. When we personally are well cast, in the right love relationship or in the right family, in the right place of not being in a love relationship right now, um, we feel a connection to spirit that we're not going to feel any other way. Being with Laura right now, I feel connected to the universe in a way I've never felt connected before in my life. And it's amazing. And there's nothing else like it. And among the things that it does is, I think it really allows both of us, both she and I, have the opportunity to really realize our potential, because we're being fully and completely supported in the roles that we're in right now. And that gives us the opportunity to live life without remorse, no regrets, no remorse. It's just full speed ahead, feeling like I am exactly who and where I need to be. And I did throw Vigo as Aragorn in there just for you, honey. I hope you appreciate that.
Oh, it's appreciated.
Yeah.
Thanks.
But, you look at some of those women in the roles that they were cast in, and, you just think about Carrie Fisher as Princess Leia, or, Emma Thompson as Hermione, or, all the folks that have really nailed it somewhere, some way. That's not Emma Thompson. She did
Emma Watson.
Emma Watson, yeah. Emma Thompson did Professor. Yeah. Anyway, the rewards of being well cast are just almost innumerable.
Emma Thompson was Professor Trelawney.
Thank you. So sometimes it's pretty simple. And the idea that, hey, you just need to make that one little change, goes all the way back to some of the stories that we have from the wisdom of Jesus. Now, the stuff that's in John is largely kind of questionable, but this is certainly the kind of thing that Jesus might have said, cast your net on the right side of the boat and you will find some. And they did. And there were so many fish that they couldn't haul in the net. The idea that if you're trying something and it's not working, sometimes all you have to do is just turn around and try it the other way. Just make one simple change. Quit doing the old thing that doesn't work. Turn, change. And sometimes it's going to be so good you can't even hold all the good. So what my suggestion for everyone this week, or maybe, on down the road as you're doing some of your self-care work, is to put on your agent hat, right? You're going to be your own agent for yourself as the actor in your life. And, when you're journaling, or when you're meditating, or maybe just when you're kind of, doodling with some paper, whatever, whenever, sitting in the bathtub, whatever you're kind of, I'm sorting out my thoughts time is, you can ask yourself, what are the different rights of my life and what roles am I playing right now? And then, so, okay, are those the right roles for me? And how do I know that they're the right roles? Well, here's a big one. Am I happy? Am I successful / making a difference? Am I able to utilize my gifts to their fullest potential? Those are just a couple of kind of questions to get the ball rolling. But you kind of get you get the idea. And if there is some kind of change in a role that you're playing right now, then like I said earlier, we are all involved in a lot of rights, and we all play a lot of roles. So, what's the first new role that I want to take on, right? If I'm going to play something, what really lights me up as a human being? What do I feel like I can actually get out there and do? Or, at this point, stay in here and do, and really feel like I'm going to be doing something, A, that is right for me, and B, where I'm kind of, adding something to humankind. I mean, it's funny that, throughout this, this past year, I've I've kind of discovered that what I do is I've ended up creating online communities, and they mean something to people. And that was not what I would have imagined. Um, but I'm digging it, and it's rewarding. So I asked, we all have to ask ourselves, if I'm going to say, what new role do I need to take on? How do I get the part? What's my next step? And particularly if we have to take a step that is going to make a major life change, we want to make sure we've thought it all the way through. And that kind of going over to one of the other sides of my life, which is 12-step. Like they tell you for your whole first year, don't make any major changes unless they're forced on you, because you're probably not thinking too clear just yet, and one of the signs on the walls often is think the thing through. Now, what we're usually talking about is if you think you need to go back out and use again, you need to think the thing through. What ends up happening. But before we go out and make any major changes in our lives, we also need to think it through. And one of the things that I have to honestly ask myself is, am I making that change out of, spite, aggravation, boredom, whatever? Or is it really because I'm not well cast? My old acting teacher used to say, there are no small parts, only small actors. And that really resonates with me as a house husband right now, because in terms of how are you cast, I mean, I was raised in a culture of toxic masculinity, and the expectation that was always there for me was that I was supposed to be out there being the go-getter, go change the world, go save the world, Charles. And part of me is that I have this hero complex, and I want to go save the world. But the truth is, I'm not real good at that. I'm a lot more emotional and a lot more supportive. I think the clergy ended up being a good choice for me. I just kind of came into an odd place at an odd time. But I'm really kind of thriving, taking care of Laura and our house, and doing what I do now, and that's awesome. There's still times when my old self-esteem demons come back and want to haunt me. Like I'm not, quote, doing enough, unquote. But the truth is right now I kind of feel like I'm acting well my part, and life is good. So, sometimes, maybe it's like we have to think about how we've cast ourselves before we can ever really step out and say, okay, well, what am I really good at? And boy, does that ever take me back to when I was doing a lot of theater. And there were some people that thought they should be the leading man or the leading lady, and they were not that. And some people that wanted to be the comic relief, and they weren't funny at all. God love them, So kind of having some deep self-awareness of what is it I really need to be playing lets us get ready to play the next thing. So it's okay to reinvent ourselves as people. And I say that as someone who's reinvented himself a whole bunch of times since I became an adult. I think in some ways, maybe it's the best way for us to grow. Now, I know that there are some people that are very successful and they're able to grow mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, in, say, the same job for 30, 40 years. They just keep adding layers to it. And that's great if you can do that. But I know for me, what I had to do was I had to do what was in front of me. Like when my girlfriend got pregnant with my oldest daughter, and then got pregnant again after she had that one, I had to pivot. And when the industry that I pivoted into then died back in the 2006 to 2008 real estate crash, I had to pivot again. And I've had to pivot a few times. And I think that rather than that making me a failure, that resiliency and the things that I've learned along the way have really given me a shot to do what I really am very good at. So it may be that reinventing ourselves is really the key to getting into, what I call the kingdom of heaven, which is really the quantum field of infinite possibilities. And somehow, some way, if we keep our eyeballs open and we keep being honest to ourselves, we may get a chance to step into the role that is the role that we were born to play. So, I would say don't let your past or your expectations, and I mean your expectations or other people's expectations, fool you into thinking that the role you're in now is the one you're stuck with for the rest of your life. So, you can get started on on playing a new character, on a new role. But it does begin with understanding, what kind of actor I am, what kind of human being I am. So it is.